All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are in game number 1 for our first best of 5 series of the day. Spawning up here in the top left-hand corner of the map, the blue Protoss player from Flipside Tactics. He actually just yesterday managed to beat Polton the previous round, and now he's up against another formidable Terran player. Can he do it? Give it up for Bales. And his opponent spawned down here on the bottom left-hand corner of the map, the red Terran player from Team Elevate. Definitely one of the big staples in the North American scene these days, and probably one of the closest people to Neeb in terms of skill level. Give it up for MaSa. All right, and already kind of saying how I think that MaSa in a lot of ways just more recently, I've got to give a little bit of favoritism to him, but man, MaSa is not going for that expansion right off the bat. He is, in fact, sending an SCV in a very peculiar location. Are we going to be seeing a proxy factory and a proxy starport or something along those lines? This is going to be pretty strange. You don't actually see the proxy factory very often, but here we go. I mean, it's not exactly going to be an easy thing to, say, float a factory over to the main base, but there is a natural expansion coming down eventually behind this. The full wall off is also going to be completed before an adept is able to make its way across the map or anything like that. Bales did go for the natural expansion. I think it was a gate nexus core, if I'm not mistaken. So that basically allows him to get up a really fast expansion on a map like, hey, Dust Towers. Gonna be able to make use of that. Engineering bay block from MaSa coming out, just trying to be annoying. So Bales is going to force out the initial Zealot, I guess, if he had seen it a little bit earlier on, but not really going to be that big of a concern. It delays a little bit of mining, in case you're wondering, like, why would you throw it in an engineering bay after the Nexus has already gone up? Well, you deny mining on at least one of these mineral patches, and the other mineral patches, this one's actually not too bad. I think you can actually pretty effectively mine over there. This mineral patch is going to require maybe 3 or so workers to actually effectively mine from, but it does take a while for Bales to actually kill this off. Bales behind this going for a Stargate, but here we go. Look at this. We got a factory. Oh, what? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Bales has not seen anything. He must have just gotten, I guess, some sort of suspicions from encountering MaSa on the ladder. He is going to find this. The starport gets canceled. Widowmine tries to burrow. It's not going to be able to get a shot off on top of this mothership core. And even that actually takes 1 or 2 hits from the mothership core. Widowmine got to walk its way all the way back home. The engineering bay is still buying a little bit of time. But I mean, Bales has so much more time with the starport getting canceled, having to probably be rebuilt back at home. This entire kind of like cheese from MaSa that delayed his expansion. I mean, he waited until the factory, I think, was plopped down before going for that expansion. So it really did delay his builder quite a bit. Well, Widowmine does make its way over the 3rd expansion. It's going to at least scout that out and see everything, but doesn't even get a kill over there, as the robotics facility is immediately forced out for Bales. He's not actually going to be able to transfer any workers down over there, because if he tries to transfer them, there's a really good chance that this Widowmine will actually just catch any units as they move down the ramp. So I guess in some weird ways, MaSa has a nice little contain. Maybe can try and play a little bit greedier behind this, but no, we're seeing the factory being floated all the way from the main base, or sorry, from the out in the middle of the map over to the main base. Starport also going up, as well as additional barracks. So MaSa's not playing this out too greedy. He does have a 3rd CC on the way fairly early on, so I guess that's at least one thing he has going for him. He's going to have 3 mules coming out. He's going to have triple SCV production to try and play a little bit of catch up. But Bales is one of those players that loves just having solid play. He's not about the kind of gimmicky play. He's really just about saying, like, I'm going to beat you in the late game, because that's the kind of Protoss player I am. He's a no gimmick, really good control, and just kind of, I would say, in some ways similar to Puck, where he's one of those Protoss players that just loves to do little bits of minor harassment, not really huge, like, I'm gonna invest, 2 disruptors and a war prism and speed and harass you from all different angles and try and get like the big hits. No, he's about like the Phoenix kind of harassment, where he picks off Marines, he picks off SCVs, he kind of dances around and consistently has that APM he's using to harass and kind of pick you apart. That's the kind of player that Bales is, and behind it, he's got really good macro. That's the big thing. He's not letting his macro slip behind all of this kind of light aggression. So yeah, exactly. You kill off couple of workers over there. I think that was what, 3 or 4 workers killed off, as one of the workers was killed off when it was building the engineering bay, but little bits of damage, nothing huge. Well, behind this, Bales does actually have that observer out, so he's cleaned up the Widowmine, it seems like, or maybe that Widowmine actually just went over to the 4th expansion, it seems like. Nice job by MaSa, just making sure he didn't just end up losing that Widow Mine, as that is something that's kind of easy to forget about. Phoenixes are going to be continuing to move around, and I guess more importantly, just getting scouts off. There's no stim finished up just yet, so they're going to have a hard time catching these Phoenixes for at least another 30 or 40 seconds, as the Phoenixes are getting a little bit low, but Bales does keep them alive. Is going to go completely perfect gaming MaSa so far. No losses whatsoever just yet for Bales. MaSa losing just a couple of SCVs that have been picked off, but oh, MaSa maybe catching his first kind of kill in the game. No, Phoenix survives just barely. But overall, I mean, not a huge amount of things happening so far. It's really just Bales trying to keep an eye on MaSa. MaSa going to go for a little bit of a move out, as Stim is going to be finishing up. +1 weapons is not going to be finished up most likely in time for this push out. But I mean, with these sentries over here, as well as just most importantly, the pylons going up, 3 pylons going to be more than enough to actually photon overcharge and deal with any of this push out that tries to make its way a little bit too far forward. Of course, you have to remember the starport was pretty delayed, so we're sitting at almost a 7-minute mark, and the first set of medevacs, I guess, is finally out. We do have 4 medevacs out, actually. Where are those 4 medevacs? I guess 2 of the medevacs were just sitting back at home, not really being rallied to the army, so finally MaSa is going to have an opportunity to get aggressive. +1 weapons is now going to be finishing up, as well as +1 armor, so Bales is taking, look at this, really fast 4th expansion. It's just saying, yeah, you know what, MaSa, you want to play a macro game? Let's play a macro game. All right, my macro is on point, and MaSa is generally about kind of disrupting his opponent. That is the play style of MaSa. He loves to get in his opponent's face, make sure that they don't feel comfortable, and that's where he kind of exploits their weaknesses. And in this kind of game where he's literally done nothing, he tried to go for that kind of proxy factory, the proxy starport, got scouted very early on, wasn't really able to make a whole lot happen. This is just not the way that MaSa generally will win his games. Now, I'm not going to discount MaSa. He's still, again, one of the best players in all of North America, hands down. Nobody's going to argue with that. Having multiple round of 4, round of 8 finishes at some premier events fairly recently. But he's still got to make something happen in this game. Phoenixes come in, they kill off a couple more units, and once again, we have still a completely perfect game from Bales so far. Like, nothing could have gone better, I think, in this situation for Bales. The only thing that I would say is, you know, upgrades finally playing a little bit of catch up over here. He's going to be catching up on +2 weapons with the Chrono Boost constantly going out on +2 weapons. But Liberators are now out, as well as some of these medevacs. And if the Phoenixes are able to catch this, that could be a really big deal. But the Phoenixes are going to be fairly out of position. Bales finally kind of, I guess, slacking as he moves out with his main army. And oh, this could get to be a very awkward situation. Bales moves out with his entire army. His Phoenixes are kind of dancing around looking for potential drops in the north side. But really, the drops are going to be coming along the south side. So, oh, is Bales really going to be able to deal with this? The robotics bay is going to be a really big target, I gotta say. As well as, of course, the Liberators moving to both the 3rd expansion and the natural expansion to be able to siege up at either one of those locations. Here we go, though. Bales is out in the center of the map. He's going on an all-out retreat right now. And guess what? That robotics bay is going to be one of the first things focus fired down. Photon overcharge goes out, and oh, the Widow Mines get taken out by the disruptor shot. And the robotics bay does go down. Phoenixes are going to come in from the backside, going to be able to snap off the medevacs and make sure that, hey, at least no units are going to be able to escape out of here. Bales does manage to keep a majority of the Phoenix alive, and loses a couple workers, loses some stalkers in the depths, but I mean, no longer has that perfect game, unfortunately for him. But here we go, MaSa coming in from another side. He's gonna take a pretty good trade over there, all things considered. I thought that was gonna go much worse. Widowmine's getting some pretty good shots off, softening up a lot of those disruptors, and even softening up some of the Phoenix. So gotta be very careful. But MaSa just does not have an army anymore to contend with Bales's. He's got a couple of units back at home. He has a couple of Liberators, but he really just lost all of his medevacs. Some of the Widow Mines end up going down over there. Couple of losses in terms of worker count, but really not substantial enough that I think MaSa's going to feel safe. If Bales actually finds an opportunity to now move out, he has the Phoenixes that can continue to pick off any of these medevacs that try and do something like this. There's only 3 medevacs out. These are all the medevacs of MaSa moving out right now. He's making more Liberators. If this army back at home is forced to deal with this army of Bales, as soon as he stims up, he's not healing up that damage. It's gone. That health is gone for the remainder of the fight, most likely. And I don't think that fight's going to be lasting for very long. Medevacs boosting across the map. Mudgecore still has a lot of energy available. The photon cannon's going back up. I think that Bales is going to be in a really solid position to take game number 1 versus MaSa. But he's still got to make his way up this ramp. He's still got to make it work. And, well, he's getting ready. He doesn't feel super comfortable moving up that ramp versus the Liberators. I really like the decision for MaSa. He says not going to go back to the 3rd, going after the 4th expansion. He's going full Polt over here. Bales is going to struggle, and he's going to actually get the defense up, and he is going to lose that 4th expansion now. MaSa doesn't exactly have a 4th expansion mining right now either, so it's not the worst loss in the world. MaSa is also losing a lot of units every single time he does one of these. He's trading out all of his army in exchange to get a little bit of this kind of economic damage done, but I mean, Bales is kind of probably okay with this. 4th expansion is going to go up for MaSa, but how long is this really going to be able to survive? MaSa is going to once again be facing down the hard barrel of Bales' gun, saying, you know what? No, I'm not going to let you sit around like this. You keep trying to go for these drops, but at eventually some point, the Protoss player says, note, enough of this. I've had it with your drops. I'm not going to deal with it anymore. I'm just going to come kill you. I'm not going to let you get away with this. I'm going to rely on Warpins and Photon Overcharge to clean things up. This time, it's only 2 medevacs worth of units. Oh my god, big disruptor shot almost goes off, but MaSa has some really nice focus fire, takes out all of those disruptors. Only 1 disruptor left over, and this disruptor is on cooldown. The units on the other side of the map do unload. Bales is trying to reestablish this expansion, and the Phoenixes are there, as well as some Photon Overcharge is still available to try and clean things up, but oh, the Photon Overcharge does come down a little bit on the later side. A big warping comes back at home, and Bales pulls back. 4th expansion is still there, and Bales just is unable to break MaSa. So even though it looks like he's just got so many things going in his favor in terms of army, in terms of trading things out, he just keeps having to go back to deal with this harassment. He never feels comfortable with the units that he has left back at home, or Photon Overcharges, or even just the Warpins. People are making fun of me in the chat saying Fear Dragon is an excellent caster because he forgets the ads. Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I do forget ads quite a bit, but here we go. Tempest gonna be coming out over here for Bale, so this might have been what he was waiting for. Double Stargate production does allow him to get 2 Tempests out at a time. He may be waiting around for around 4 Tempests. That does actually kind of change the shift of the battle. 2 Tempests slowly but surely take out the Liberators. 4 Tempests do take him out pretty damn quickly. So we'll have to wait and see. How is MaSa going to be able to respond? Is Bale going to be able to actually break into this entrenchment? A lot of these Liberators are kind of sieged up in a big, wide area. They're not all really covering the same kind of angle that it seems like Bales wants to charge in through. Big disruptor shot does go off, taking out a decent chunk of the Marines and the Marauders on the front line. And hey, MaSa's army doesn't look so scary with the Tempest actually wailing away at these Liberators. A couple more of these Marauders on the north side. They do actually unload because I think those Phoenix forced them to. And now they're going to try and move in, try and see if they can get some damage done. DT is going to be a really nice response over here. Going to force MaSa to burn scans if he wants to get any damage done. These DT is going to be able to 2-shot these Marauders that don't have any medevac support. Easily gets dealt with. Finally, Bales gets the breathing room he needs to actually continue the assault. This has been the big problem. He's continued to try and make the damage happen, and every single time he gets pulled back by a drop, but here we go. MaSa is finally trying to stim in over here. A big disruptor shot does go off, getting some nice damage done. Bales is at a bit of a convex over here, as MaSa definitely gets the concave, but I think that Bales just has way too big of an army. 3-3 upgrades for both these players. The Liberators are all getting taken out though, and Bales is gonna walk ahead, taking game number 1 in this best of 5 series. All right, and finally my victory screen catches up. But that does put Bales at a 1-0 lead in this best of 5, and that's really freaking awesome. Because again, I think a lot of people would have said if you looked at this with no context, you didn't look at any of the previous history of matches, the fact that Bales beat MaSa the last time they faced off against each other about a month and a half ago or so. You would probably say like MaSa is pretty heavily favored. If you also didn't look at like maybe MaSa's most recent win rates in just in general. Okay, I think that I am going to be making the next map so we can get those awesome WCS mod overlay and everything going on. So let's see, King Sejong Station for game number 2. We'll get that map made. But yeah. Let me know, by the way, if there are any like problems with the audio or anything like that, because I saw some people talking about production, but I don't think they were complaining and saying that there were any problems just yet. They were just saying in general I have a lot of problems, which again is a very fair complaint. Here's the thing, like I have all these kind of crazy graphs and like statistics and all kinds of crazy things I like to do with production. And sometimes it does become a little bit much. Sometimes I kind of overload myself with it, but for the most part, I really do enjoy doing it, so. I like to learn from the experience, and eventually I'm gonna get good enough at it that I'll be able to do it without making all these kind of production mistakes. All right, just waiting on the ready from MaSa before we hop into game number 2 on King Sejong Station. MaSa. All right, we are getting ready. King Sejong Station is the next map. We'll see you guys in game number 2 for our first best of 5 in the quarterfinals, the losers quarterfinals. 4 players in the quarterfinals for the losers bracket right now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. We're hopping into game number 2 on King Sejong Station in the losers quarterfinals. I don't know why quarterfinals only has 4 players this time, but that's just the way the losers bracket works. Spawn down here, or up here in the top left-hand corner of the map, we have the red Terran player. We're currently down 0-1, but still very much capable of a comeback. Give it up for Team Elevate's MaSa. And his opponent spawned down here in the bottom right-hand corner of the map, the blue Protoss player from Flipside Tactics. Give it up for Bales. Okay, well, in that game number 1, I've got to say MaSa tried to do his sort of disruption sort of game plan, where he tried to disrupt Bales, but look at this. This is the time that Bales is going to be going for that bit of that disruption. This is something I was kind of hinting at in the opposite direction earlier in that last game, where Bales is the kind of macro player. He's the player that will say, you want to go to a macro game, let's take it to a macro game. That's where he feels comfortable. But one thing I will say about Bales is do not mistake him as a player that is afraid to cheese or unwilling to throw out the kind of all-ins and weird stuff at you, because he is not afraid in the slightest to do so. Of course, MaSa does go for the SCV scout. Is going to be able to scout out and see, hey, there's no natural expansion. That is a little bit odder to see in the matchup around this time. I was also going to come in over here and see, oh, you do have a double gas geyser, and I only saw 1 pylon. Where's the rest of your stuff, Bales? Sees the probe moving down to the natural expansion, is going to probably be thinking, okay, maybe I should go for the engineering bay block. Maybe I should be preparing for things. He is going for the 1-1-1 opening. Had already thrown down that expansion, so definitely going to have to go for that. But I like this. Going for the bunker, the safety bunker very early on, saying, I'm not taking any chances if this is like some sort of proxy gateway thing that's going on. And it is going to be a Stargate. It's going to be just straight up proxy oracles. But no, adding on 2 additional gateways. Oh, man. Bales cleans up the SCV. Yes, does clean up the SCV. Fane's going for the natural expansion with the probe over there and just sending that adept as well as the mother core across the map. MaSa is going to be in a lot of trouble if he's not prepared for this. The adepts can just shade their way past the bunker, so bunker can be useful to some extent, but it is really, really hard to make it really effective. The main thing I'll say that the bunker is going to do is going to really make it hard for a probe to sneak by. I would actually love to see if the probe want to do something like sneaky, where the adept absorbs a couple of hits from the bunker and the marines. Probe sneaks by, stamps behind photon cannons, or sorry, not photon cannons, pylons behind the mineral line, throwing down photon overcharges if he needs to. Safety kind of warp in place, but man, we even got a Void Ray coming out behind all of this. So Void Ray plus the Oracle came in, tried to get 1 kill. That's not really a whole lot of damage. Can't even activate its pulsar beam right now with how little energy it has. But Bales is not done just yet. Only 1 adept made so far. He's waiting for warp gate technology to finish up. He's got a proxy gateway over here as well, just so that he has, it looks like, total of 4 gateways and a Stargate pumping out that Void Ray. Oracle able to get a little bit more damage done. Cyclone goes for the lock-on, but not quite able to make it work. What is MaSa doing behind this? He's getting out a Viking. This Viking is going to be more useful than he probably even knows, where he's only seen the Oracle, but here we go. Cyclone moves out, and he is going to get so close to scouting out the gateway. There it is. He does spot it out and is going to actually catch wind of the adept. Going to be able to snipe that off. Most likely should be able to kill that off. Really, really nice. Oh, the Oracle does try to jump on that Cyclone. Cyclones can't jump inside a bunker, so it is going to go down, and the Oracle should be able to escape on out of there for at least a little bit. But MaSa should probably know what's going on at this stage. He's seen the proxy gateway. He's seen the Void Ray. He's seen the Oracle. All right, well, here we go. Double Void Ray is going to be coming on out, and the Siege Tank is out as well. Adept's getting focus fire down with the Siege Tank. The Void Ray is trying to focus fire down the bunker. The Marines trying to kill off the Void Rays. A lot of focus firing coming down over here. The bunker does go down, but Bales doesn't have a lot of units behind this. Time Warp goes down, and it does slow down a couple of units, but I mean, to what end? All of the gateway units have been cleaned up for Bales. He has to rely on another warp, and GG just gets called. Bales taps out. MaSa defends against the cheese. Well done by MaSa, as, yeah, the attack from Bales, I just, honestly, not gonna lie, didn't really look like the strongest all-in. I mean, MaSa just seemed pretty prepared for it. The Cyclone dealt with the Oracle, made sure it didn't do an absurd amount of damage. Siege Tank coming out really helped out quite a bit with just that splash damage on all of those Adepts. And the Bunker just took a really long time to actually focus fire down, so the Void Rays ended up getting sniped off after they killed off the Bunker. They didn't have enough time to retreat out. The Marines were able to get on top of them. Just not a lot really went well for Bales in that build, so I'm not sure how the build is normally supposed to look like, but definitely looked like a very, very solid hold over there for MaSa. One of those builds that I would say, like, after a performance like that, you just don't do that build again for the rest of the series, maybe. You just kind of say, like, okay, this isn't gonna work probably on MaSa. Let's try something else. Let's go back to our kind of tried and true standard of maybe a little bit of macro play. All right, but ladies and gentlemen, while we get this game started, we are gonna hop to a short little break. So we'll see you guys in game number 3 in just a little bit. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are in game number 3. We got into game number 3 really quickly. I mean, this series has already been going by very fast, but here we are in a best of 5. Spawned down here in the bottom right-hand corner of the map, the blue Protoss player from Flipside Tactics. Give it up for Flipside's Bales. And in the top left-hand corner of the map, we have the red Terran player from Team Elevate. Give it up for MaSa. And, gotta stop that music, but, a couple of people in the chat kind of talking about how there was a bit of a mic crackle. That really just happened when XSplit end up using the muting function on XSplit to mute my microphone. So I think I honestly might just start looking into like a different solution for that, because it's whenever I use XSplit's muting that it ends up having that crackle when I return. If I use some other kind of muting mechanism, it usually doesn't have that problem. So I don't know, maybe I just won't be muting my microphone. You guys will just hear me during the breaks, awkwardly coughing and typing and all kinds of other fun stuff. But here we go. Game number 3. I'll kind of focus on this now and not really talk too much about the production stuff. We do actually have Bales going for a bit more of that macro to play again, saying, you know what, that one base all-in didn't really go so well. Let's try a bit more of the standard play, because that seems to be where his strength is. Well, I mean, at least that's a potential. We do have a Twilight Council coming out, and I will say most Twilight Councils these days, they tend to lead into Blink play. They tend to lead into Twilight plus Robo. You get up, maybe you get up Adept Resonating Glaives, and he goes for a little bit of an attack, do some damage. But for the most part, I would actually argue that it generally leads into pretty normal Protoss play, PvT play. I'm interested to see what MaSa is going to be doing in this game. He does actually have the Siege Tank coming out once again with the factory, maybe just preparing for any kind of initial aggression that Bales could throw out at him. Really just getting into a nice defensive position, and we'll see if he actually goes for a fast third expansion, kind of like he did in game number 1. Granted, game number 1 is a bit weird. He went for the proxy, didn't quite work out very well, so he was definitely looking to play a little bit of catch up. But again, MaSa's that player that I really like to see disrupting his opponents. So going for things that allow him to disrupt his opponents, going for things that basically allow him to put the pressure on and get in his opponent's face. Those are the kind of builds that I like to see out of MaSa. We do actually already have second barracks being thrown down. Blink is being researched right now for Bales, so wouldn't be again surprised to see that typical Protoss play where you try and go for maybe a faster third expansion, add in a couple of gateways for safety, but Blink is really there for the drop defense more than anything else. As well as not just drop defense, but the Liberator defense as well, since Liberators have definitely become rather common these days in pretty much every matchup. Cyclone being made over here from MaSa. MaSa's just actually been playing pretty in the dark until just now as he moves out across the map with, this is very MaSa. The kind of weird push-ins, throwing down a bunker even. I mean, just a Siege Tank and a handful of Marines with a medevac. These Marines, I mean, they don't have stim, they don't have combat shields or anything crazy cool like that. No, they're just standard Marines saying, you know what, I got a couple of units, let me put the pressure on, let me kill off a couple of things that a very greedy Protoss player would normally have at this stage. And here we go. He's getting some nice damage done. Already kills off one of the pylons. Bales has been very, very conservative with those photon overcharges, not throwing down any of them until just now. Throws it down on the further back pylon, more interestingly. Not the one that's a bit further forward. There goes the further forward one. Siege Tank is eventually going to be able to pick this stuff off, though. Oh, Immortal comes in, almost gets a snipe off on the Cyclone. So close to be able to kill that off. That would have been a really, really big deal because, oh, that Cyclone is going to be probably the biggest, I guess, target to be able to kill off the Mothership Core, or even just killing off some of these pylons. That additional damage if you can get the lock-on in combination with the Siege Tank. But Bales is starting to take some serious damage. The mineral line itself is under attack now. He's starting to lose probes. The Marines are getting involved. And there's no Force and Overcharge that's going to be available for at least another couple of seconds. Adepts are going to try and shade their way in. A couple of these Immortals are also in the mix. And here we go. Bales is trying to break through the contain. 3 bunkers have been thrown down. Blink Stalkers do blink forward. They're going to try and focus fire down the Liberator. But all the Stalkers get taken out. And MaSa holds the contain. The Siege Tanks are still alive. The Medevac is still at full health. The Liberator is still alive. So more Stalkers have to be worked in to try and blink on top of that Liberator to take it out. But I mean, as soon as they do, these Marines are going to have a heyday, a field day with them. And Bales could very well end up losing this natural expansion, not to mention the fact that he's already down 11 workers. Immortal coming in from the high ground, trying to get a little bit more damage done, but I think that there's just way too much damage that's happened so far. Liberator trying to get focus fire down, but it's getting repaired up by the SCVs. The Stalker gets taken out by the Marines and the Siege Tank. I think this is already a foregone conclusion at this point. Siege Tank does get taken out, but guess what? More Liberators coming on in. Bales has lost so much, and he's had absolutely no way to put it on the counter pressure. Behind this, Stim is going up. +1 weapons being researched. We have more Siege Tanks, more SCVs being made for MaSa right now. I mean, once that other Siege Tank actually gets over to the other side of the map, he's going to be able to even continue to siege up this Nexus, if it's even alive at that stage. If the Marines just continue to put the pressure on. Well, here we go. Liberator unsieges at the absolute wrong moment. Stalkers blink forward, get a kill off, and manage to escape out of there without really any significant losses. So maybe Bales can kind of get small little pickoffs and eventually push across the map, but this Nexus is so low on health. How in the world do you come back from this? How do you do it? I don't have the answers to this. Maybe Bales does, and that's what makes him the player that's playing right now. And that's what makes him one of the players that was able to beat someone like Polt, but oh, well, I mean, this is an even harder situation than I think he was facing versus Polt. Depths are going to be able to shade on in. I think he does have a big enough army to at least take out a majority of these units, or at least a good chunk of them. A depth shade in from behind. Liberator is going to continue to try and focus fire down on the Stalkers. I think it's a really smart decision making from MaSa, as the Siege Tanks and Liberators all try and focus fire down on the Stalkers, and that leaves the Liberators totally safe. There's nothing that can take them out right now. Siege Tanks back up a little bit and say, oh, you got Force and Overcharge going down? That's okay. My Siege Tanks just back up a little bit. Taking out another Immortal. The Adepts on the backside. Yeah, it's just GG. MaSa able to take game number 3 with just, I've got to describe as a really weird push out. There is no other description for that. I mean, moving in with just, what was that? Maybe 10, 11 Marines, a Siege Tank, and a Medevac. And pulling a couple of workers to build the bunkers. I mean, the bunkers, without the bunkers, he would not have been able to hold that position once those Adepts came out and actually started shading onto him. So those bunkers were pretty damn important, but that was a surprising conclusion to the game. I did not expect it to end like that. Or I should say, I didn't expect the aggression to start off like that. I didn't expect that it would be so damaging. I thought it was going to be one of those things where he kills off maybe a couple of pylons, and then he has to back up as, you know, the next round of reinforcements come in. But I mean, the bunkers just added so much value, and the Liberators got there. It totally also changed the game plan for Bales, because he suddenly couldn't just afford to warp in more of those Adepts to soak up that damage. He actually had to start warping in a lot of the Stalkers to blink onto the Liberators. And the Siege Tanks were doing a good job focus firing them down, so he continued to have to warp in more and more of the Stalkers. He'd have enough Adepts to take on the Marines, but he wouldn't have enough units or Stalkers to actually take out the Liberators themselves. Alright, well, we're hopping into game number 4. Bales is now sitting down 2-1. And MaSa is 1 game away from advancing on and playing versus the winner of Pili Pili versus Pakil. Whoever wins this is going to have to play versus a Protoss player, so we'll see who's going to be that victor. So ask the players if they are ready. MaSa gives the go-ahead. Win for Bales. He gives the go-ahead. We're hopping into it. Game number 4. Map is going to be Frost. We'll see you guys there. All right, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Game number 4 as we start down here in the bottom right-hand corner of the map on top of the blue Terran player. Representing Team Elevate, give it up for MaSa. And his opponent spawned down here in the bottom left-hand corner of the map, the teal Protoss player from Flipside Tactics. Currently sitting down 1-2, but looking for the comeback to win 2 games in a row. It's Bales. And again, any time you have to win multiple games in a row versus someone like MaSa, it is going to be an uphill battle. MaSa is that player that will throw out weird sorts of builds, and I think that last game was probably the best example of the most typical MaSa build you could ever see. People used to talk about how Huck was this player. I know Day9 used to always talk about how Huck was this player, and what used to be so scary about him back in Wings of Liberty was that he would just move out at really weird times with unexpectedly, I guess, different numbers of units than you would normally anticipate, given like whatever timestamp it was, a 5-minute mark or 8-minute mark. He would just move out with just really weird groups of units, and people wouldn't expect it, and they would just end up taking damage to it because they would say, "Who does this?" And that's sort of MaSa in a nutshell. MaSa's the player that will move out at weird times as well as the usual times, and he'll actually get a lot of damage done. And I think that the thing about that push-in is that, yes, there are some players that will go in with, say, you know, a medevac, and they'll maybe get a little bit of damage done with a drop player. There'll be like Widowmine harassment, there'll be Liberator harassment, but I guess pushing at the front like that is something that I really just don't see very often in the matchup. There's going to be a fast factory tech up over here for MaSa, though. We also have a tech lab finished up very quickly on that for that factory, so got to be able to pump something out very, very quickly. Command center does eventually come on down. Marine patrolling, and guess what? Bales has not scouted out MaSa at all just yet, and if the Marine is controlled well, if it does stutter step correctly, it will be able to take out that probe before it's able to make it past the Marine. It should be able to deny the scout out on that command center, especially with another Marine out. You should be able to pretty much completely guarantee it. At the same time, though, MaSa doesn't exactly have a lot of information on what Bales is up to either. Bales is going for the Twilight Council. He went for the more normally timed Nexus, a much earlier Nexus. And we'll see what he can do with it. As the Twilight Council is going to be finishing on up, but here comes in that SCV for MaSa. Bales' probe does escape out of there alive for at least now, but I mean, doesn't exactly get a whole lot of vision. Besides, oh, he does actually scout the timing of that natural command center. That is pretty surprising. So it looks like just barely being able to make it out of there. Really, really nice for Bales. Of course, he should be able to deny the mine or the scouting over here from MaSa, as the Cyclone's gonna have a hard time moving up this ramp. It's gonna be able to get a lock on, but I mean, it immediately loses it as soon as it loses that high ground vision. So MaSa is going to be forced back. Sees Muzzjacore, Stalker, and an Adept. That really doesn't reveal a whole lot. Can probably assume that there's a natural expansion, but it's always good to have a bit of confirmation. Never hurts to have some confirmation. Cyclone going to be sitting in the main base just because MaSa is going to prepare for potential Stargate openings if there's going to be an Oracle running around rampantly. Of course, a little bit later on, there's potential for, say, a Warp Prism to have come out, and maybe some Adepts to be coming in. But we do have just Blink coming out. We have an Observer being made right now. Bales is looking to try and play that kind of macro game once again, and maybe this time he's going to be hoping to say, well, as long as I actually am able to deal with any kind of weird aggression that MaSa throws out at me very early on in the game this time, I should be able to get to that late game. Dust Towers went really, really well for Bales. Once he was able to get into that macro mode, once he was able to get up to that 3 base economy, pumping out units off of all the production facilities, he was able to deal with most of the drops fairly effectively. He lost his robotics bay, yeah, kind of halted disruptor production, and maybe did a little bit of damage here and there, but overall, Bales did a really, really nice job in Dust Towers in dealing with any mid-game or late-game aggression that MaSa was throwing out. Comet Shields and Stim are going to be on the way over here from MaSa as he starts to finally get up that starport. That early factory with the tech lab did allow him to get up those early Cyclones, but I mean, he also got up a lot of the barracks before he actually got heavily into the starport production, so hasn't really been able to do a whole lot in sense of not really being able to get out the medevacs, not really being able to get out Liberators or any of the kind of things that Terran players really need, those initial Stargate or starport units to put the pressure on any Protoss player out there. Those medevacs should be well timed, around similar-ish times to when Stim finishes up. He can move out around the time that the medevacs come out, and he should be arriving at Bales' base around the time that Stim finishes up. But whoa, we got actually some pretty aggressive Blink Stalkers blinking forward, trying to snipe off the Cyclone. Not quite able to get it. One of the Stalkers does end up going down, but only kills off a single Marine. Can continue to try and put some pressure on and make MaSa feel uncomfortable, forcing him, oh my god, to actually be a little bit careful with his medevacs. Gonna potentially lose one of them as the blink does go off and retreats on out at the absolute perfect moment. Gets exactly the number of shots off he needs. And that's gonna hurt this push in for MaSa. That makes those stims a little bit harder to make work, because every single time he stims, well, I mean, he's going to take a bit more time to actually heal all of those units up. Stim has finished up, and hey, Bales blinks out of there immediately, saying, hey, you know what? I don't want to really test anything over here. He is going to end up losing a couple of these Stalkers, or at least a lot of the health on the Stalkers. Photon Overcharge should be able to push this back for a little bit, though. Cyclone locking on to, it looks like just the probe initially. Killing off the worker, or as well as the pylon. Not really gonna be able to do a whole lot of damage over there, as Bale says, let me knock down these rocks, make it easier to move between my natural and the third. Both these players are going to be getting up their third expansions. MaSa's is a little bit later on, doesn't have quite as many workers, but hey, he's got mules, he can kind of make it work. I gotta say though, this army is stimming up quite a bit, and it does need a little bit of time to actually heal up with these medevacs, because these adepts, these stalkers, are going to be hitting them pretty quickly. Alright, third expansion is continuing to be defended over here for Bales. Pretty successfully, might I add. Double Forge is going down behind this inside the main base. Oh, I know the production hasn't really kicked off for Bales just yet. He's really only sitting on these 3 gateways. Gotten up his Double Forge now to start up those upgrades. And also has the Robuxility, but I mean, losing some of these pylons has supply blocked him, so he's halting some of that production. He really does have to be kind of careful as he gets more and more spread out. Stalkers are going to be nice as the kind of mobile units that can dart back and forth between not only the natural expansion of the third, but also be able to blink up to the main base very quickly to deal with the drop there. Well, we got some Widow Mines coming out. We got the Liberators coming out. MaSa's starting to throw out more than just the pure Bioforce at Bales. He's going to start throwing out a lot of those tech units, as well as, I guess, the Cyclone, the single Cyclone that has been involved in the fight for a while. I guess he had ended up losing that earlier Cyclone, so this is a different one. Adept shading around, most likely more just to get scouting information to see where the army is, see if he's being dropped, and not seeing the entire army over there has made him a little bit paranoid. Yeah, you can see he's splitting up his units, saying, okay, I didn't see the full army. I know that there's got to be something moving around over here. And he'd be correct in that assumption, moving all of his Adepts and the Immortals over here to the third expansion. That's the more likely place where the ground army will move in. And over in the main base, that's where the big medevac drop would be coming in. So he has all of his Stalkers positioned over there. He sees the scan, and generally when a Terran player scans, you know that there's going to be an attack coming in. MaSa kind of gives himself away a little bit. But I think that Bale's going to see this, and these Liberators are going to be a bit vulnerable. MaSa, he's going to got to be very, very careful over here. At the same time, he comes in from the backside, and Bales doesn't seem to notice. He does warp in a couple units inside the mineral line. Going to pull back, but he snipes off those Liberators that are just sitting pretty much very, very vulnerably out in the middle of the map. A lot of the bio is going to get focus fire down. Some of the Stalkers being traded out for them, but 13 workers go down. That's a really, really nice pickup for MaSa, who has been continuing that worker production, still going and producing more and more of these workers, going up to 70 off of these 3 bases. That's a pretty heavy number of workers for a 3-base economy. Maybe overproducing workers just a tad bit, as you can see. A little bit oversaturated over his main base, fairly oversaturated over at this third expansion. Maybe could actually even get that gas geyser at some points, just because he can afford it. He can afford the SCVs to start mining from that gas geyser. But here we go. We do have Bales moving on out. Going to try and get a little bit more damage done, and I guess counteract some of the workers that he just lost. He has 1-1 upgrades, getting out 2-2 upgrades, and he's going to be hitting before the +1 armor for MaSa's finished up. So we're going to have a small little lead in that sense. Adept's going to be shading on forward, trying to make it past these Liberators that these Stalkers can also blink past. Do have to cancel out as he sees not really a good opportunity over there, not really a good engagement angle. He's moving around on this bottom side. Looks like shading around just again to try and see what he can find. Is he actually going to let that finish? Oh, I love this. I love when more Protoss players are starting to do this more often, where they shade out with a ton of these Adepts, and they see an opportunity, but they don't commit with all of them. They commit with just 2 of them. Look, just 2 Adepts able to kill off 7 workers. That's really, really nice. Warp Prism now going to be coming in, and oh, we got 4 DTs loaded up, or at least 2 DTs, or 3 DTs, I should say. I don't even know what that stalker was actually fighting over here, but looks like Bales may try and time this out, so the Warp Prism comes in at the exact same time that the rest of his army moves in. 2 DTs getting focus fire down by these scanned units at the same time. Bales pushes on in, but not the best engagement over here. Some of these adepts are already falling rather quickly. The DTs in the main base for the most part do get cleaned up. There's another DT still available. Liberator going to be able to chase down and kill off that Warp Prism at the same time. MaSa pushes out very, very far. Liberator's resieging on up, and Bales has to pull back, but he's doing a good job fighting outside of the Liberator range, and I think that he's not taking the worst trades in the world over here. 2-2 upgrades also finished up for Bales, so I mean, I think he's okay with taking bio versus gateway trades right now. As long as those Liberators are not getting too involved in the fight, probably should be okay. DT in the main base gets cleaned up, as that was the last remaining DT from that War Prism harassment that came out earlier. And Bales is just looking for some sort of angle he can attack into. 4th expansion was thrown up, but this is a really, really weird position for the 4th expansion. This is where it gets kind of awkward, these spawns, because, well, it's so close to MaSa. And look at the position for Bales' army. It's all the way up here on the north side. He's trying to push him from this north side. If a drop comes in from the south side, or even just a Liberator walked its way across the map on the south side, he'd be in a lot of trouble, but I mean, for now, he's pretty okay because he's taking some pretty good trades. Once again, he's again doing these good trades outside of the range of these Liberators. And you can see that MaSa's army is starting to not really look as, I guess, scary. A lot of it's underneath these Liberators, but Bales' army has got these Immortals in the mix. He's getting up some of the Disruptors now, and MaSa, he's got some armies. I mean, he's got a lot of supply, but where is it? Looks like he's starting to produce the Ghost. That's going to be super duper helpful. 4th expansion also going up for MaSa. Both these players just expanding toward each other, and they are basically a stone's throw away from each other. Just right across this ridge. But here we go. Another big engagement potentially hinting at happening over here. Disruptor shot goes up, but not really accomplishing a whole lot. More Liberators trying to siege on forward, just trying to cut Bales off, making him run out of space. And I mean, Bales started off all of this all the way over here on this right-hand side, and he has been pushed into his 3rd expansion. He doesn't have any more space to run away from these Liberators, and this is where he is going to be forced into an engagement where he has to shade on into either Liberator zones, or at least blink into the Liberator zones and shade on past them to try and deal with the Bioforce. Liberators again sieging on forward. Bales maybe even just using some of these DTs to try and snipe off the Ghost. Doing something over here could be fairly useful. The Ghost can do a massive amount of splash damage, and even just forcing out some of those Immortal Hardened Shields. Oh, the Adepts actually shade on in very, very early on. They're going to be engaging against the majority of the army by themselves. Disruptor shots do come out a little bit later on, but the Stalker count is just absolutely slaughtered, and I don't think that Bales can actually hold this anymore. He's already been losing workers, but on top of that, he just doesn't have the anti-air defense anymore. GG gets called. MaSa is going to knock Bales out of the loser's bracket and moves on to the next round. Well done by MaSa, taking the 3-1 victory over Bales. And I mean, Bales definitely put up a good fight, especially that game on Dust Tower showed that he was very much capable of at least contending with MaSa, but just wasn't quite able to, I guess, close it out or take into the other games. But ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be hopping to a short little break while we get the next series started up. It's going to be Puck versus Peely Peely in a PvP series. That's going to be another best of 5. The winner of that faces off versus MaSa. And the winner of that series that's going to happen after this is going to face off versus Hydra in the qualifying match. You guys are watching BaseTradeTV coverage for the WCS Challenger North American qualifiers, or I guess whatever you want to call them. It's just WCS North American Challenger. There's so many different weird names for things, like even the Montreal. It's DreamHack Montreal. It's the Summer WCS Circuit Championship. There's all kinds of weird names. I have trouble following it, honestly, and I feel like I follow the North American scene pretty closely. But yeah, we will be back with this regardless in just a couple of minutes, so stay tuned.